any coffee farmer will be faced with. The first one would be to continue current practices and hope that pricing changes and the status quo changes at some point. So that is the first alternative for someone producing coffee. The other one would be to engage more in producing specialty coffees, which across the world, especially in the North American market, would fetch higher prices. And the third one would be for farmers to go towards, to focus more on production of organic and what I call cause coffee production, or rather certification programs. Now, option one, when a farmer decides to continue as per norm, as per the current practices, I would call this safe play when someone does not want to take the risk of perhaps changing the things as they are, and perhaps it's expensive for the farmer to do so. The risk is high, so they decide that they would like to, keep things as they were and hope that things change for the better. Now, in my experience with farmers that we work with at Baba Coffee, I know that there's a lot of farmers out there that are sort of disgruntled and cannot, they cannot, stick with status quo. So they're always searching for change, searching for new solutions. And perhaps, one of the things that I feel on the ground is that the farmers don't have access to proper information or alternatives as to the way forward. So much as the farmers want to move from the status quo, the resources may not be available for them to do so. Now, the other option would be for farmers to focus more on high-quality private labeled coffees. Now, very briefly, the North American market is more, I would say, the demand is higher for specialty coffees in the North American market than in Europe. The trends of specialty coffee have, in this market have really grown. So you have people seeking out like really, really high-end great coffees with a story behind them. And this is where you have roasters in the U.S. seeking out to do direct trade with farmers in countries like Kenya and within the region. And such coffees fetch really good prices per pound or per kilo. And because they're also not, in huge supply. So we do have roasters around the world that seek out specialty coffees. And then the third alternative, very quickly, is the organic and certified coffee production. Now, organic coffee is a very niche market, and there is high demand for organic coffees due to consumers feeling that they need to move towards trends of consuming products that are better for their health. There is a challenge I have sensed amongst farmers in transitioning to organic farming, because it means it's a definitely high-risk approach, because it means your yields will drop, and it takes you up to 3 years to actually become fully certified, and it would take farmers around you as well to join the certification program. So a lot of farmers, I know, shy away from fully switching to organic farming, but there is a very high demand because coffees that are organic do fetch up to 25% higher prices than other coffees. Now, the other way or other route in alternative three to certified coffees, and then I'd like to just quickly go through the certifications there are in the market right now, and I know we'll get into detail with this during the Q&A session, but there is a very interesting discussion to be had about certification programs and whether they do benefit not just the smallholder or even the large estates, or is this a marketing gimmick? Because I've had people asking the question, what do certifications really do for the farmer in developing countries? We do have various certification programs such as the 4C standard, which is a business-to-business concept for the coffee supply chain. It offers a sustainability baseline for producers. You have the oats certification, you've got the Rainforest Alliance, and then you also have the Fair Trade certification program as well. Now, in Europe and in other developing countries that consume coffee, it has become the norm that trading houses or people importing coffee have requests that, due to, I guess, more transparency reasons, that they would like for coffees that they're procuring to have one or two of this certification programs. Now, the thing is, I mean, in my experience, some of the certifications, other than, say, the Fair Trade, which in Kenya, for example, is readily available to smallholder farmers that belong to co-ops. Other certifications would demand that the coffee farmer puts the costs of these programs individually if they don't belong to a group, but most of the farmers, especially if they don't belong to a co-op, would have to foot the cost of getting into these programs on their own. And many farmers tend to ask us, is this really worth it? Is there really a market for this coffee? Because I think one key problem that has been prevalent in the coffee industry, especially in Kenya, is a lack of clarity in the supply chain. Once the coffee leaves the farmer's hands, it's sort of, farmers are shrouded in some sort of, secrecy, not knowing, okay, has my coffee been sold, or once it's sold, how long do I have to wait before I get the money? So farmers ask themselves the question, if they indeed invest in some of the certification schemes, when will it pay off? Because, I mean, the payoff, given some of these farmers are in debt, has been, it's a long time coming. So, I mean, those are some of the highlights of this discussion. And I believe, I'm not sure if my 15 minutes are up for that bit, but I'd like us to, I think, with those highlights, maybe move into a brief, I mean, the Q&A, and then I'll touch on the other bits of
Okay, it's actually almost 15 minutes. I'll read the first question. It's from Benjamin. He's asking, which are the best class of Arabica coffee? How is classification of classes 1 to 9 done? Okay, I'll have Baba answer that.
All right, thank you, Benjamin, for your question. Now, from my knowledge of classification, if I understood the question correctly, coffee in Kenya is graded by bean size. So you have your AA, your AAA, your AB, your Cs, and AA is known as the biggest bean size. And the classifications are also done once the coffee beans are passed through the sorting trays. Of course, the coffees are then capped, and that's when the classifications of 1 to 9 come in place. It's all about what we call the liquoring or the capping process that now determines descriptions that you hear liquorers talking about: the body, the acidity, and also, I mean, when the coffees are sent out to any importer, the grading of the coffee actually starts from the look of the green bean, and then from the roasting process, as you go to cap it, they will look at the body. Is it a full-bodied coffee? Is it lighter on the tongue, and then acidity levels. Kenyan coffees are primarily known for their good level of acidity, hence why they're used around the world for blending or spiking the flavor in other coffees that may be a little flatter. But the key things that are the liquor or in the cupping room that we look for are the body and the level of acidity of the coffee. And then on a more specialized level, which is where specialty coffee now takes it up a notch, is the flavor profile, what we call the flavor profile. And that's where you hear terms like citrusy, blackberry notes, things like that come up on now consumer descriptive notes on coffees. I don't know if I've answered the question fully, but I hope Benjamin is satisfied with that answer.
Okay, I'll ask another question from Ivan, who is asking, what is the percentage of coffee produced under certification that is truly sold as certified coffee? Okay, I'll have Vav answer that.
In terms of statistics, and this is also from more recent just conversations I've had with traders in North America, there is a misconception. Even, I mean, I recently had a conversation last Saturday with a roaster who said he's been told in the past that, I mean, there are no fair trade coffees out of Kenya, or people just cannot tell what is fair trade and what is not out of Kenya because bags are not marked. And I was actually shocked to hear that. So that being said, I cannot sit here and give you actual stats on percentages of coffees that are sold as certified because it's a blurry area right now. I mean, more and more farmers are moving towards certification. From what I know on the ground, it is an expensive process, so I mean it will take time, but I cannot give a percentage as to coffees that are sold certified out of, you know, to the importing countries.
Okay, there's another question from Chuaga. He's saying, for the status quo option, where the farmer waits for the prices to improve, will it not affect the quality of the coffee? Again, how long should the farmers keep the coffee without compromising on the quality of the coffee? Okay, I'll have Vavan.
Okay, when I say that the farmer has the option of status quo, it means he continues business as usual. He doesn't stop taking the coffee to the miller. He just continues life as if, you know, nothing. So he keeps taking his to to the miller, hoping that one day prices will get better, and he keeps struggling in the same mundane way day to day, hoping that the status quo will change. And this is the case of a farmer who just doesn't want to take the risk. But you can actually hold coffee up to 2 years in green form when you've actually taken out the husks. You can hold coffee for up to 2 years in green form, but I can tell you that it will be a hard sell for countries that buy coffee, for you to sell coffee that has been sitting for that long.
There's another question from Sophie. Sophie is asking, with a new devolved government, counties have engaged in coffee marketing. Does this pose a risk to producers? What is your opinion? What is your opinion, and what's the way forward? Especially if one has a limited investment.
Okay, Judy, could you kindly repeat that question? I didn't quite hear the first.
Okay, I'll repeat the question. With the new devolved government, counties have engaged in coffee marketing. Does this pose a risk to producers? And what is your opinion on the way forward?
Okay, my opinion on this bit is one. I mean, as a coffee company and as a trader, we have experienced some of our own problems with the devolved government simply because I believe not everyone quite understands the coffee industry and how it operates. It does pose a risk to the producer, of course, because there's a lot of people trying to get their hands on or try and get into the trade, perhaps not for the right reasons. And so it has created a lot of confusion on the ground, not just for the farmer, but also for traders, because I mean, we've had all kinds of rules and regulations being thrown around at county level. What can you do as a farmer? What can you, and I mean, counties are now waking up and just coming up with new rules and regulations. And as a business, I mean, we've also had our own inhibitions to trading simply because politicians are now toying with coffee. And I personally believe the way forward for the coffee industry in Kenya particularly is for less government involvement and for more, I mean, you let the people who are good at what they're doing, the private companies, trade and create markets for coffee farmers. So personally, and also as a company, we see problems, especially if people cannot sit at on the same table and agree on what is best for the farmer. Because at the end of the day, if the farmer is not happy, we are not moving forward in the coffee industry.
I will ask the last question before we continue with the presentation. The question is from Mateo, who is asking, what is the best strategy to approach a market like the Italian one, where the coffee is blended from various origins, and he is citing example of Arabica and Robusta coffee?
Okay, I understood the question to be what's the best way of approaching the Italian market. If that is indeed the question, I mean, if you're a producer, I would say if you're new to the trying to get your own buyers, first would be to send samples. I know the Italian market loves the Robusta variety, but they also do buy some Arabicas. Europe is actually switching more to moving away from the harsh Robustas to integrating some Arabicas in their blends. And I can say for a fact, I mean, the first way to start is sending out good coffee samples. Give them your best Arabica. At the same time, the price of Arabica could be some sort of hindrance, but I'm sure that they're good Arabicas which can meet the price points that any trader would be looking for. So the best way to approach any market, not just the Italian market, is to start off with sending out samples. You identify the main trading houses or individual roasters, because some individual roasters may have the capacity or the financial muscle to directly import the coffee. Hello?
Go on with the next session of 15 minutes of presentation.
Judy, I didn't quite.
You can go on with the next 15 minutes of presentation.
Now, for the next bit, I'd like us to discuss what value is it for the producer to be engaged in the value chain. And before we get into like some sort of in-depth discussion, let us look at the coffee retail industry and the market segmentation for this industry. Now, the coffee retail industry, which is what I mean primarily makes up what we call value addition, is composed of in-home consumption and out-of-home consumption. Now, in-home consumption in most countries, for this bit here, I'm not going to use Kenya as an example because the consumption in Kenya is quite low. I want us to look at, say, a European country, say in the Netherlands. In-home consumption is segmented into the supermarkets, the specialty shops, and this usually makes up 70% of consumption. Then you have coffee bars, restaurants, hotels, and offices. That's the out-of-home consumption, and this makes up 30%. And then coffee is usually sold in various forms. You can buy coffee in ground form, in bean form, and the new trend, I mean, there's new trends in Europe like coffee pods, or you can just buy regular cups of coffee. Now, I've had this debate going on for a while, and I'm an advocate for this, as well as the value addition, and actually having the Kenyan coffee farmer or farmers around the world be part of this game. What benefits would it be to a farmer to engage in this? One benefit, I believe, is that finally farmers will get to be knowledgeable about what goes on the other side. And then once a farmer knows what the end consumer wants, the farmer could possibly, work harder in producing great coffee, because most times, and this is an experience I've had on the ground, farmers don't understand when you tell them, for example, especially when you're trying to tell them that they cannot all receive a blanket price for coffee, and that one farmer's coffee, like, he had some very good AAs, they could fetch up to say $380 for a 60-kilo bag, whereas someone else's coffee fetches $250. For farmers to understand the concept that when you cap coffee, there's coffees that score 98% on the SCAA scale for grading coffees, and then there's coffees which score 80%, and that alone determines what the take home for that. I believe it's important for farmers to start understanding the value addition bit, the roasting of the coffee, the packaging, and how much that pack can fetch anywhere around the world. Once a farmer is taken through these steps, I think some of the little problems we have on the ground will be solved. Farmers may start saving money, they may start investing more in their crop, especially if they are paid on time. And what we call transparency is now brought to the ground, because one thing I find in Kenya is that there's a lack of transparency with once the farmer takes the coffee to the miller. And then if they haven't sourced their own buyer, that's the end of, that's as much as they know about their coffee, and they wait to get paid 3 or sometimes 6 months later. So I believe if we have producers become a part of this chain, some of the tension in the coffee chain will be eased. And then the other discussion point here is boosting local consumption. If we boost local consumption, a good example I'd like to discuss is, say, Kenya. What impact will that have on both supply and demand? One of the key one area of impact here would be that perhaps at some point, a good example is in Brazil, where they also consume a lot of their coffee, and the other one is Ethiopia as well. At some point, if local production in Brazil does not meet the consumption needs for Brazilians, at some point they could be importing coffee, same as Ethiopia. I mean, I personally would love to see the day that Kenyans consume more than just 4% of what we produce. I know that is a long shot, but at Baba Coffee, we work tirelessly trying to get every Kenyan to try a cup of coffee. So I hope at some point we will have Kenyans drinking Kenyan coffee. This also, if we start consuming more of our coffee, it also mitigates the risk of market prices. When the market prices fluctuate, if there is a local demand for the product, then farmers have got no fear of where are we going to take the coffee? We're fetching low prices because you've already built demand, not just outside of Kenya, but within Kenya. Now, the other point of discussion would be when we come to value addition is finding other uses for coffee. Rather than relying on just selling your coffee to a trader, what other uses can we have for coffee? Now, coffee can be used in the beauty industry. I know coffee is great for beauty treatments, especially for women. It does help cure cellulite treatment in women. I know that for a fact. And there are studies done along these lines. And there are companies in South Africa and even in the US that produce beauty products using coffee, and some of it is Kenyan coffee. But I think as Kenyans, we've not fully tapped into that, which is another area we should possibly look at. And the other value addition bit here is the use of coffee husks as an energy source. And I know companies like, say, AfriSol, which I believe is in Kenya, using the remnants of coffee husks to create pure energy sources. Now, having said this, I mean, there's obviously a level of appreciation that will have to go hand in hand with bringing consumers, I mean, the producers, to be a part of the game in this way. It's obviously not an easy task, but I believe it is doable. And in this way, I believe, once we have of the market, even as producing countries, then prices will not just be dictated to us. We can actually dictate what prices we would like coffees to fetch, and countries like Kenya and smallholder farmers in Kenya will finally have a voice of their own in coming up with decisions as to what they want to sell their coffees at. Now, at some point, especially if such high demand for coffee is created, there will be the issue of maybe scarcity. I look at conditions in Kenya whereby real estate has taken over some of prime coffee growing land, and what we see is, I mean, it's a case whereby Kenya may not be producing enough coffee for the export market, and then that also now creates another effect whereby, and this this is just to trigger conversation for the next Q&A, is that if there's such a high demand and coffee now becomes scarce, will certifications really matter anymore? Because when a product becomes scarce, I doubt at this point importing countries will really care whether it's a certified coffee or not. All they would like is good coffee. That is something to ponder about for the next Q&A. And other points of discussion which I'd like brought out during the question and answer session are, if we consider the different growing regions, say Africa, Latin, South America, are these markets perfectly competitive? Are they monopolistic, or are they oligopolies? Now, I think we all understand what a perfectly competitive market is and what a monopoly is, and I hope everyone knows what an oligopoly is, but if not, an oligopoly is a state of limited competition in which there's the market is shared just by a small number of producers or sellers. And a question I'd pose to everyone who's a part of this webinar is, perhaps if I can get an answer to it, what would you consider the Kenyan market is? Latin America, what type of a market it is, and let's sort of engage in that type of a discussion. And I mean, at some point towards the end, I think the last bit after this Q&A, I'd like to get into recommendations for farmers who want to differentiate their selling or marketing strategies, and economies of scale as to cost implications, and is it really worth it for farmers to pursue any of the recommended marketing strategies. So I think at this point I'm happy to go into Q&A.
Okay, there's a question from Dennis from Tanzania. He's asking why the coffee prices are not stable in the world.
Well, Dennis, thank you for your question. You see, the coffee markets operate like the oil markets. It's like a stock exchange. It's a commodity. It's a highly traded commodity, and it's a very volatile market, whereby it's not just demand and supply that dictates what coffee prices are. It's other factors that go into that coffee production, the cost of shipping the coffee from, say, Kenya to the US, and political situations and things like that, and also the crop. It's an agricultural product. So each year there's that uncertainty. Each growing season there's that uncertainty of the quality, the quantity. Yeah, so all those factors and all those uncertainties make coffee what it is, such that you can never. But what you can do as a producer is ensure that you're always producing great coffee. That way, you'll never lose out. You'll definitely not go below the price is. There's ways of farmers also mitigating their risk in this. You either now decide you're going to seek certification, like fair trade certification, whereby you will not be offered a price below what the fair trade mark has stated, and then if you produce really good coffee, your coffee will always fetch great prices no matter what volatility is happening in the market.
Okay, there's a question from Mateo who is asking, what are the characteristics that induce a roaster to choose one producer over another?
All right, good question. Characteristics that would make a roaster choose one producer over another. One, quality of the coffee. Because I can tell you the number one thing that will make any roaster around the world jump on a plane to come see your farm is the story behind your coffee, good coffee. Because before they fly down, most likely they've tasted a sample of your coffee and they are impressed and they just want to come down and get good coffee, which is why you have roasters around the world planning their trips. Like I know a couple who are booking tickets right now, ready for the main crop season in Kenya. So it's definitely starts with quality, because even before they meet that farmer on the ground, they're after quality coffee. So first and foremost, it's quality. Second is, I would say, your character. If you're in a co-op, it would be the character of the people managing the co-op. If you're a direct trading estate or a direct trader, it would be your character as well as a person, because nobody would like to invest that amount of money to deal with someone who's shady or someone who is not going to come through. Because another thing that scares roasters around the world is when there are promises of volumes and shipments don't come in, or you cannot meet the volumes that you promised you can meet. So some of those factors play a role, but I would say first and foremost is, can they be assured of quality coffee?
There's a question from Nerea. She's asking, we all know technology has globalized everything, but is there a platform for online coffee marketing? And if so, do you think enough people visit such sites that market the coffee online, or are such platforms ignored at the expense of other social media sites? What can then be done to attract more people to visit such platforms?
Okay, from what I've understood from the question you're asking, can the platform for online coffee marketing grow, or is there space for this type of thing? Certainly, I think there is. If you look at competitions like the Cup of Excellence, which runs each year, where coffees from around the world are cupped and people bid online for the best coffees, and farmers are rewarded handsomely for great coffees. And it's a system that works, because how do people trade for these coffees? It's an online auction. And personally, given, I mean, we are headed towards this digital age, that is one recommendation I would make for the Kenyan market. But I think in the Kenyan market, there's certain other core issues that need to be solved first. But I certainly advocate for online, like there should be an online platform for people to have access to coffees. Yeah.
I'll read another question from Benjamin. He's asking, why is it so difficult to have direct coffee market, especially in Kenya?
Sorry, Julie, why is it so hard to get direct coffee marketing, especially in?
Why is it so difficult to have direct coffee market, especially in Kenya?
I would say in Kenya it's more of a political game, and if you ask me, it's because, I mean, there's been a couple of bigger corporates that have benefited from the status quo, which is how things have been for the last couple of years, and don't want things to change. So it's then harder to get a direct trading license in Kenya, but it's doable. It's just that, you see, the Kenyan coffee industry has been shrouded in sort of, we're still in the colonial era in the way we trade. So, and the bigger companies would not like to see or to feel threatened, which, yeah, so I guess for me that's the simplest answer as to why it's so hard. But we have to fight as people within the industry to see that things change, because I believe farmers benefit more from direct trade than any other form of trade in Kenya.
There's another question. How easy is it to be organic certified? And most farmers are used to the use of chemicals. Can this certification be harmonized to be one standard, since it's very expensive for the farmer?
Okay. First of all, I'd say organic certification is one of the hardest certifications to attain. That said, because any of the certifications available locally in Kenya are not recognized internationally, so you would have to be USDA organic certified, and then there's other levels to that depending on where you're shipping out your coffee to. Yes, farmers are used to chemicals. We try and educate farmers even where we go to do our trainings and to source from, to reduce on this method. So it's a tough switch for any farmer, but it can be done. It takes patience and it takes money, and it takes a promise of an actual market. And what we found with farmers in Kenya is that once farmers are assured of a market, even in the interim as they do the switch, then they are more willing to adopt to organic farming methods. Farmers are not going to just switch to anything, especially coffee farmers now. They're just not going to switch for the sake of, you know, making that switch. You have to assure the farmer that, for example, Baba is here. Baba will buy your coffee, and if you make this switch, she will walk, this journey with you. So I find farmers are more adaptable to making that switch once they are promised a market, and you discuss pricing with them, because I mean, organic coffee does fetch higher prices, and there's other certifications as well that will help a farmer, but I would say it's one of the hardest certifications to attain. After, there's also another one, the Smithsonian certification, the bird friendly one, which is the toughest, but organic is a hard one, but it's doable.
We'll have the last question from Marvin. Marvin is asking, what can be done to raise the coffee consumption in Kenya?
That's a good question. Okay, I would say the first thing that can be done to raise coffee consumption in Kenya would be the demystification of coffee, because I believe the problem we have with Kenyan coffee consumption stems from colonial era, where Kenyans were not encouraged to drink coffee and they were pushed more to tea. So as a coffee company, we've realized that once Kenyans are introduced to coffee, the few Kenyans, I mean, we've interacted with the last couple of years, they are pleasantly surprised when they taste coffee. They actually like it, and I think it's definitely a hard process for Kenyans to change this mindset, because there's one thing to put up coffee houses around Kenya, but it's another thing for Kenyans to actually be drinking the coffee. Because I know people think that when they see Java or Art Cafe or Dormans or, a lot of these coffee shops stemming up on every corner, they think that, whoa, Kenyans are drinking a lot of coffee. And I'm like, no, Java makes 30% of sales maybe from coffee consumption, and the rest is from them being a restaurant, because I view Java as being a restaurant. Now, to change the coffee drinking culture in Kenya, I would say we need to focus on the youth. They are the ones that are the change makers in trends, in changing any trend. But then again, it's to emphasize that we need to take control of our own industries. We need to take control of our own raw materials as a country, coffee being a very important one. And once we start taking control of this raw materials, coffee being, the point of discussion right now, then we're also able to change the economy, because a lot will change if Kenyans even moved to 10% consumption. I know it'll be a long time before we get to the level of Ethiopia, but we can get there slowly if we just change that mindset that coffee is for foreigners or coffee is expensive, because there are coffees out there that are quite affordable to the regular Kenyan. So I think it's a switch. Changing any culture is tough, and I think in Kenya the issue is it's a cultural thing. But I think every Kenyan just needs to start tasting coffee, and slowly, one cup at a time, we're going to change the face of coffee drinking in Kenya.
Okay, just before conclusion, there's one last question. Just is asking, do you really think an individual farmer could sell one bag to a US roaster? He's addressing this in terms of specialty coffee.
Basically, you're asking for an estimated price. Well, current market prices, I would say, for specialty coffee depends. It'll depend on how good your coffee cups. I can tell you, specialty coffee traders are looking for nothing less than a coffee that scores 92 upwards. If it scores below, I would say even like some of them would not even buy one that scores a 90% on the SCAR scale. The SCAR scale is the Specialty Coffee Association of America scale. Most of them go look for coffees, especially during main crop season, which is when they do most of their buying. coffees that score between 98 and above. A coffee like this, if it's an AA, could go, I think, for, because we usually do our quotes per 50 kg bag, would go for, I would say, 395 to 420 upwards. And I think I've actually underquoted just because my mind is like on what current prices are, but I would say tops 420 for 50 kg bag, and to get the cost of a 60 kg bag, multiply that by 1.2, and you have your price for that. I've seen coffees sell for upwards even $600 for really good coffees out of Nyeri. Yeah, so you can get really, really good prices.
That he means an individual farmer. If an individual farmer can be able to sell one bag of coffee to a US roaster.
Are they talking one bag of coffee, or are they talking many bags? Because it doesn't make economical sense to sell one bag, and they would not accept one bag anyway.
Okay, I think he means one bag.
I, that would not be possible unless, okay, let me not say that would not be possible, because I know people who have flown coffee out of Nyeri in private aircraft because the coffee was so good. They literally flew to Nyeri, loaded 4 bags, flew back. So how good is the coffee is the question. And do you have access to crazy for coffee? Because I know people who flown to Nyeri to just pick up 4 bags of coffee.
I'll now give you 5 minutes for conclusion.
Sorry, Judy?
Okay, we can now have 5 minutes for conclusion.
I would say, in conclusion, what I feel, I mean, coffee marketing strategies and things that can help change trends mostly for farmers, because I personally am very passionate about the coffee farmer and what they can do to improve their lives. There needs to be more transparency in the supply chain for sure. And when I say transparency, it stems from price points, it stems from cost of production, but we need, especially in Kenya, farmers need to get to the point whereby they are paid a price which is above their cost of production, because currently in Kenya we find farmers who are still being paid below their cost of production, and hence coffee farming ends up not making sense for them at all. And to encompass all of this, there also needs to be, I think, a change of governance, be it at the co-op level, and other, I would say, other bodies that help move and bring about, what is it called, that set the rules in the coffee industry. And then I think one key thing is that we need to make the coffee farmer a part of this game, because without the farmer we have no coffee, and we cannot keep taking advantage of farmers. Farmers need proper access to information. So if forums can be created whereby even the farmer who's got no access to internet has proper information that is not taking advantage of the farmer, that would be a great step. Farmers need to start understanding value addition. At Bava Coffee, we've had instances where we've had farmers taste coffee for the first time in their lives, and they are wowed about it. They see their coffee packaged as a final product. They become excited, and that motivates them. So I think making farmers a part of the game and talking them and taking them through even the simple mathematics behind what a finished bag of coffee could fetch them would be a great start. And then we have growing local consumption would be key, because that in itself is like would drive a lot of change, and that we're not, as producing nations, we're not too dependent on just exporting all the coffee that we produce. You look at Ethiopia. Ethiopia, I would say, is safely guarded against any serious market fluctuations because they do consume their coffee. Yes, and I think if all of these things are taken into place, and also just encouraging more direct trade, if we have more companies out there that are willing to trade with coffee farmers directly, that would be a great start to also just liberalizing the market and creating more transparency. And then if we had, I mean, on the issue of transparency, if the actual benefits, the pros and cons of this certification programs are brought out to the farmer, then farmers can make more independent decisions, and they don't feel like they're being forced to be a part of a program that would not be beneficial to them. And I would say those would be my brief points in conclusion. Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of the webinar. On behalf of Progreso Network and FTalk, I would like to thank our attendees, and also thank you, Vava, our facilitator. We will make the presentation available on Progreso Network. But until next time, goodbye.